Hey everybody, Deadlands, the Weird West, is sort of the quintessential setting for Savage Worlds. It's great, it's got a lot of really good stuff in it, and you might say maybe it's not all that useful if I'm running something else like a cyberpunk or a sci-fi or a post-apocalypse or something like that. But I'm here to tell you there's a lot of good stuff in the Deadlands book that you can use in your other campaigns.
Savage World, one of the best games today.
Hey everyone, it's Carl with Tabletop Tango. Look at the bubbles, do the stuff. We'd love your support, likes, subscribes, all that kind of stuff. We are trying to push for a milestone on subscription, so if you like what you're seeing or hearing, go ahead and subscribe, and we'd love to see that. So what am I talking about today? So I'm talking about a bunch of rules, I don't know, I think there's 5 I counted, that you can take from Savage Worlds, Deadlands, the Weird West, and Lost Colony to kind of up your game or do a little something fun in your other settings, and they all kind of make sense. So let's get into it real quick. So the first one that I think a lot of settings put this in, but if your setting doesn't and you want to use some of this, there's the concept of El Cheapo gear in Deadlands Weird West. And what this is this is gear that costs half as much as it normally would cost, but on any trait roll that's related to it, if you get a critical failure, it falls apart. So this isn't just weapons, because lots of times settings have like weapons or armor that might be, not all that good shape that fall apart. This is pretty much anything. So in Deadlands, they talk about it could be a wagon that loses a wagon wheel as you're doing maybe a driving roll or something like that. So that could be the same thing for in your science fiction game. You're trying to push the envelope on something, and you've bought that dilithium converter on sale just to be able to get off the planet, and you're about to, hit that hyperdrive while the bad guys are chasing you. Could add for some very interesting play dynamics. So El Cheapo gear is the first one. Next one is a big one, I think, is Dueling. So I did a whole video specifically around the Dueling mechanic, and I'll try to remember to put the link in the show notes there. And it's really a great thing for any kind of face-to-face confrontation that's ending up deadly. So obviously in Deadland, this is about people slapping leather in the middle of the street at high noon. But it could make sense for a buddy cop movie where you've got the bad guy and he's holding a hostage, and it's the last pivotal scene. Maybe you're going up against an alien in your spaceship. And that's the last big taking them on. So there's a lot of opportunities for using it elsewhere. So Dueling is a 3-round little mini game where each player is dealt a whole card. They get action cards like normal. They can do tests to try to fluster their opponent. And if they succeed on tests, they might get a card. And so the idea is you've got this whole card, and you're trying to build up a hand of cards, because at the end of the duel, you play your action card out of your hand. So you don't know exactly what the other person has. And it's deadly because the rules say you can't soak wounds from a duel. So it can add some very exciting flavor to your game. That's not just a Wild West kind of setting. Another one is if you have, like, you're on an alien planet and it's got a lot of interesting animals and stuff, there's a concept of stampedes in the Weird West. And the stampede means anyone caught in a stampede must invade on their action of their turn or take 2d6 damage. It takes 3 rounds to get out of a stampede, and if you get critically fail on your evade, their damage is an extra d6. So this is really, it's simple, but it's all about sort of that large flock of things that are coming. So in Jurassic Park, you've got all those dinosaurs chasing the scientists through the park. So it could be very interesting and pretty cool. That could be a fun part and something to add into your game. Next one is a big one. It's the Huckster and their concept of dealing with the devil. So this is a Huckster thing in Deadlands, the Weird West, and it's really kind of cool mechanic because it allows this arcane background to kind of play a card game with the folks that are giving them their power, and it allows them to, A, cast spells that are powers that they don't necessarily have or memorize. They don't necessarily have as part of their powers list, but it also gives you a chance to get more power points if you do really well on your hand and you get more power points than you need to cast a spell. So how does it work? Basically, you start by anting up a Benny. The cost, that's the cost to play, to do this. You choose a power, so you tell the game master what power you're going to use. It could be a power you don't normally have. You tally all those points up that you need to get and you want to spend, and then you gamble. You get a handful of cards. You roll your gambling roll. If you get a raise, you get the extra couple of cards. You get a success, you get one card, and then you try to make the best poker hand. And then that poker hand, depending on what it is, gives you the number of power points that you basically have to cast a spell. So if you get enough power points, it casts. And if you get extra power points, then those go into your pool. So then finally, you're casting the spell, and it's, there's some negatives based on if it's a higher rank than you currently can cast, but it gives you an opportunity to do things you can't normally do. So it's really kind of a cool mechanic. You could modify it or tease it into another setting, because poker is pretty universal. You can, you're at the cantina and you're trying to cast or do a power. It could be part of an arcane background that's in another setting. So it's really kind of a cool mechanic that would make sense for your own custom arcane background just for your setting. Last thing that I have is from Lost Colony, and that is what we call blacklining. So a lot of settings have drug use, things that the player could to take something to enhance them. Deadlands Lost Colony also has that. So they have a thing called blacklining. So it surges their user's adrenaline, increases his strength and vigor by 2 die types. Conversely, it reduces smarts and spirit by a die type each. And the effects of a dose last hours. So you make a vigor check at -2. A critical failure causes a psychotic break, and the user becomes murderously hostile. That's cool. Success means the drug functions as normal, as I mentioned. With the raise, the character also manifests some psychic powers. So that's kind of cool. So that would be neat think about in a cyberpunk setting. That would be kind of a neat option, especially the psychic powers that, opening your brain up. And that could be kind of a last ditch effort somebody might take. So that's pretty cool. So like I said, 5 interesting rules. We got El Cheapo gear, we got Dueling, we got Stampedes, we got the Huckster, and we got Blacklining. All good stuff that's in Deadlands that you can take advantage of, I think, in any setting, or in most settings that make sense. So should be fun. Take a look at that document, pull out some of the cool stuff, and we'll catch you in the next video, after you look at the bubbles and do the stuff. Like and subscribe. We'll talk to you later.
Savage World, one of the best games today.